Hannah Oli Pop Rock Radio. Estás escuchando Jamie Roxx de Pop Rock Radio. Manténganse al tanto.
Hej, det här är Hits från Sverige och vi lyssnar till Pop Rock Radio med Jamie Roxx.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. So glad you found it and you tuned in and whatnot. I'm very extremely happy to welcome our guest today, Mrs. Erin Macdonald PhD. She's the technical director on a ton of the Star Trek stuff, namely, well, all of my favorites, but the new Prodigy. You also do the Science Advisor for Space Cadet, available over on Amazon Prime. And you all around real neat lady.
Thank you. I
you know,
appreciate that. All the
top of the list of people to invite to a dinner party. I'm telling you, it's amazing. So let me ask you: you grew up. I understand you went to college. You did your undergraduate work in Colorado. Are you from Colorado when you were a young lass?
Yes, I'm actually speaking to you from Fort Collins, Colorado, because I am here for Comic-Con, the local convention. And yep, born and raised Fort Collins, Colorado. And then I betrayed my entire Colorado State University family and went to the University of Colorado in Boulder, but it's fine. They got over it.
You know, it happens. It happens. I went to a party one night in Boulder many, a million years ago that was supposed to be for the evening and wound up staying a week. And
that happens.
Yeah, the party just didn't stop.
Not the first time I've heard a story like that.
It was insane. It was insane. Well, very cool. Now, were you always into science? First to sign up for the science fair, that kind of thing?
Yes, I was. I think there's a lot about, I mean, we all start out as scientists, right? Discovering the world around us, problem solving, figuring out that the stovetop is hot and you shouldn't touch it again. All of that is science. And then, I just fell in love with space. I think space and dinosaurs are objectively cool. We all kind of get that awe-inspiring moment. And then I was, I grew up in the 90s, so I was watching the X-Files, and I'm a little redheaded girl who wants to become Dana Scully. And so that kind of put that seed in my mind to become a scientist. And so that's kind of how I got set down that track. And yeah, so, I saw these cool women on my screen who were scientists, and I said, I want to do that.
That's cool. And now you are one of those cool women, and I'm sure I have a little niece, and I'm not supposed to mention it. I actually have two nieces. I had one until yesterday at 10:02 in the morning. And my brother and sister-in-law people are like, why don't you ever post pictures? They ask me not to. I have a crazy show with crazy guests. And more importantly, the guests are okay. It's the listeners, the audience, that they get concerned about. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah, they want to keep all that offline, and I respect that and whatnot. But I'm just you have to understand, I'm the cool uncle, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you got to shout that from the rooftops. I get
exactly. Yeah, and so I get excited. But she's discovering things, and so she's at the point, the youngest, not the youngest, the second youngest now. The youngest was just born yesterday, but the second youngest, she just turned 3. And so I'm getting her books, got her Danny and the Dinosaur because she loves dinosaurs and, all this kind of stuff. And I'm, and she loves to read. She loves people to be read to, and she's trying to read. And so I'm encouraging that as much as I can because, and I don't worry too much about it. Both of her parents are engineers, so, but they see women like you, these little girls will see women like you and shows, especially now, like Star Trek, we need it. We need it as a society, It's certainly a nice break. It's a nice break.
Well, they did a study, the Gina Davis Institute did a study on women grew up in the 90s and if they watched the X-Files or not. Mm-hmm. And they found statistically huge margin that if you watched the X-Files and you were a young woman growing up versus if you were a young woman growing up and didn't watch the X-Files, you were something like 45 times more likely or something to go into a STEM field, and they called it the Scully effect. And it's like, I am absolutely a product of the Scully effect. She was the reason I wanted to be a scientist. And so you're right,
Absolutely.
like representation, seeing yourself on the screen, seeing yourself doing things that you didn't necessarily think were an option is so important.
I'm telling you, I'm Native American, and I can tell you for a fact, if I go to Tahlequah, Oklahoma today and mention Star Trek, Chakotay, everybody loves Chakotay. I mean, he is on the same level culturally in that community as like Billy Jack from the 60s.
I
You know,
love that. Yeah.
yeah, and it's cool to have that representation in science fiction. It just doesn't always happen. And I think that they use that in a very cool way, you know. And I gotta say, one of the things I love about the shows, and I'm sure you're a big part of this, is Star Trek's real, and they've always have been, but they've gotten much better, you know, with the advent of technology and special effects and whatnot. That life in the universe may not always look like us, you know.
Yeah.
Chances are it probably won't.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Like a lot of that's practical, right? Back,
Right.
you know, in even the 60s, but even in the 80s and 90s, that it was easier, cheaper. They're making 22, 24, 26 episodes a season. They just slap a prosthetic on someone's forehead and they've got an alien. But now, you know, we're shorter seasons, bigger budgets, better CGI. And so, yeah, that ability to truly explore strange new worlds and to find aliens that are truly alien, I just think is so cool and so fun.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I'm telling you, Strange New Worlds, I know that you did some work on that. I was looking at IMDb. Love it. I'm a huge fan. You know, I could go on every episode on how just cool things were. You got my wife into Star Trek. She had
Nice.
never seen a Star Trek episode. Started watching Strange New Worlds, and then went to Prodigy, or not Prodigy, but Discovery, and just, you know, she's young, she's a millennial, you know, they have representation, you know, there's LGBTQIA plus main characters on it. She was all about that, you know, and I think that's indicative of her generation.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I don't think that's a bad thing, you know.
No, what I love is that, you know, Star Trek has always had a legacy of representation and being on the forefront of that. Even just having, you know, Nichelle Nichols as Uhura, as a Black woman on the bridge, in
Absolutely.
a command position, that is revolutionary. And so what I love is that, you know, Star Trek can then go and have first sort of non-binary main character and a gay couple that's not their entire identity, you know. They
Right.
have their storylines, it's not all about them and uh and their relationship to each other, but it's part of their life, and so it's part of the stories in that way. And what's so great is I do feel like if there was to be any pushback, which I'm not at the level I would even know if they had those conversations, but they could always just point back and say, no, but like, this is what Star Trek does. Like, yes, it's
Absolutely.
scary. Yes, it's, you know, yes, it hasn't been done before, but that's the point of Star Trek. And that's why I'm just incredibly proud to work on a franchise with that legacy.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. You know, speaking of the original series, having Chekhov on the bridge
Yeah.
in the height of the Cold War, they
Mhm.
have a Russian on the bridge. It's hard for people today, I think, to wrap their head necessarily around. And like you said, Nichelle Nichols, the interracial thing at the height of the civil rights movement. I mean, and she's a
Yeah.
woman, of course, and you know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's
It
amazing.
really is. Yeah.
But it is nice. I love that about Star Trek because what does my wife call it? She's like, man, you just doom scroll. And I'm like, I'm not doom scrolling. I'm scrolling through the news feed. It isn't. I think it's terrible that watching the news is doom scrolling, as you
Right.
guys say. And it's nice to be able to put on a Star Trek show.
Yeah.
And
I think Yeah, Star Trek, I think that's why a lot of us became Trekkies, because it offers a vision for a future that sometimes doesn't feel possible right now. Ups and
Right.
downs, obviously, but yeah, watching Star Trek, and that's why honestly, like Star Trek Prodigy, season 2 came out, but like watching that, it just felt so unique to a lot of the shows that I was watching at the time. Just obviously, I'm incredibly biased, but it just reminded me of like why I fell in love with Star Trek in the first place. Of just it's so hopeful and it's so kind and it's so, respectful and curious and engaging, and I freaking love it, man.
Those uninitiated who have never been under the protection of an alliance or pursued dreams beyond their scope. Today, the crew of the Protostar has been given a chance to discover who they are.
You seem rather adept with Murph. Have you ever considered becoming a xenobiologist?
Xenobiologist? What's that?
It's the study of new life forms.
A chance to prove what they're capable of. A chance to improve themselves.
It's perfect.
And finally, a chance of finding their place in an endless universe.
And a world we all would all like to live in,
Yeah.
It's very nice. Nobody's getting beat with a baseball bat because who they held hands with, at the grocery store or something. It's
Right.
it's fantastic in my opinion. And you know what it is, my
Yeah.
opinion or not. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because you've got the coolest job in the world, I would say. So I imagine, this is what I imagine, and maybe I'm off on this. You're sitting at home, your husband's making a gourmet meal in the other room. You're in your study, of course, roaring fireplace, leather-bound books everywhere, perhaps a hound at your feet, drinking a brandy sifter, reading the latest Astrophysics journal, that just got published. And then the telephone rings and it's your agent or whomever saying, hey, you're looking for a side hustle? You're looking for some work? And you're like, I guess I could fit it in. Is that pretty much how that came about? Getting the coolest job in the world?
2 corrections. It's a cat, not a dog, black cat.
Gotcha. Of course.
A little void dragon. And it's a single malt scotch, not a brandy.
Gotcha.
But other than that, perfect. Yeah, no, we all talk about the call, and it certainly is it is a call. Like, it is a thing that happens. Now it's, a lot of people say, it is one of my favorite quotes, is a quote from Lucille Ball, where they asked her how she got so lucky. And she said, I don't believe in luck. I think luck is hard work and knowing what is a good opportunity and what's not. And I think for me, I've just kind of always followed my passions. I love teaching. I love engaging with the public. I love wearing literally my nerd on my sleeve and on my skin. And that's kind of what's always kept me driven. And so it really came from teaching science, using science fiction is kind of what got me on the radar. And then figuring out how to explain that stuff led to a very comfortable position explaining it to writers and coming up with ideas and being creative. And I'm already a consumer of media, like way more than watching TV more than reading astrophysical journals. But and so understanding that world and how to problem solve and how to explain things, those were all skill sets that I had, that when that call came to say, like, hey, do you want this job, I was able to do it well. and such that they wanted to not just have me on Discovery, but then extend that job to the entire franchise. And yeah, I'm incredibly proud of that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And now, if I'm reading this correctly, and you have to understand, my day job, I'm a painter. I paint pictures of stuff for a living. Been doing that a long time. But I'm not in the entertainment world necessarily, as you have a foot in the science world and in the entertainment world. So if I get something wrong, apologies in advance. But you're voicing some stuff in the Star Trek. You've kind of parlayed that into another wicked cool jobs. How awesome is that?
It's the Hollywood hustle, man. I mean, what's funny is, when I was a postdoc, like I had just finished my PhD, I was doing research at Cardiff University, and I was interviewed for like a small science of science fiction thing. Friends of friends knew I was a nerd and I had a PhD at that point. And then I watched the footage of that and went, oh no, this woman has not spoken to a non-scientist in many moons. So I was like, I gotta get out more. And I grew up, my thing growing up, some people have gymnastics, whatever. I was in dance. I love being on the stage. And they don't really have classes for adults who were dancers and don't want to do it professionally, but still have all those skill sets. So I took an acting class and I found a great organization called Actors Workshop in Cardiff, and it was for adults who want to really, really learn acting while having a day job. And I did that in the evenings, and I loved acting, but being heavily tattooed as I am, on stage and camera work was not really something that I could do, but I loved voice acting. But it was purely a hobby. I would do voice acting in like fan audio dramas, little fan dubs, just small projects that would come up. And then flash forward a few years later, I wrote and narrated a course on Audible called The Science of Sci-Fi with the great courses. And so that was an opportunity to professionally be behind the microphone. So it's just been like this background thing. And then lo and behold, they were like, hey, do you want to voice Dr. Erin in Star Trek Prodigy? And I was like, yeah, it all came together. Nice. It all came together.
Nice. Well, I love it. I have a friend of mine that does, I don't know what it's called. She reads books, and she gets paid to do it.
Audio narration. Yeah,
audio narration. And, and at first I'm thinking to myself, because again, I'm not in that world, and, I'm a stupid guy. And I'm just like, how hard could that be, And she's like, thing is, Jamie, on day 14 of keeping your voice the exact same way as it was on day 1, it's a little hard, and you have a summer cold that came up or whatever. And I'm like, I never really thought about that. So tip of the hat to anybody who does that kind of work. I couldn't do it.
Audiobooks are another level. I did one, and it is, the great courses, I think that was like 4.5 hours of finished product. It was a 2-day recording session. But I did one like book. And the physical exhaustion, you just can't even imagine. That's, a lot of times to get your best voice, you have to stand. And so ideally, if you can do it while you're sitting, that's great. But a lot of people like standing, and that's hours and hours. So like you said, if anyone sort of turns their nose up at it, I'm like, pick a book and go stand in the corner and just read it out loud for the next 3 hours. And then we'll talk.
Now, see, I have a friend in LA that does that, and she gets paid $300 an hour to do that, to tell guys to do that. No, that's a whole different show. I'm kidding. She's heavily tattooed as well. So is my wife. My wife started a new job this week, and she's working in a medical plastic surgery type thing here in Boca. And her first day was the other day. She had to wear scrubs, went and bought scrubs, and you could see all of her tattoos coming out from and she was worried about it. And I said, well, sweetie, every lab and hospital I've been in the last 10 years, it's like any kitchen. Every chef is covered with, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But I get what you're saying with in front of the camera, when people are writing big checks, they want it the way they want it.
And I've got so many, the makeup and time costs to cover them up would be extensive.
I don't have any, not for any particular reason other than I dislike pain and I try to avoid it. And there's no band or anything that that has moved me to the point of I want this on me forever. But it's lack of commitment, and I own that. But my wife, man, as I understand it from everybody I know has tattoos. I think I'm definitely the odd one out by not having them. But they say they're addictive. You know, you get one and you're going to get a lot.
Yes, they are. It's a thrill. The pain, the natural pain relief that your body puts out while you're getting a tattoo feels pretty good.
I get it.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I love the idea of just like literally wearing my heart on my sleeve, you know? And so people can see me and they immediately are like, I get her. She's got Vulcan script on one arm. She's got all of her sci-fi ships on another arm. And
How
it's
cool
like,
is that though?
like,
Come
oh
on,
shit.
man.
You know, yeah.
You know.
Is that the Normandy SR2 from Mass Effect? I love Mass Effect.
Yeah, you know, I mean,
Best friend.
I'm telling you, there was a time, Erin, there was a time if you would have been at the club, you know. Trying to think of what the cool clubs in, I don't know, I've never been to a club in Fort Collins, but Denver, the church on Sunday nights was pretty good. I've been there once or twice. Snake Pit downtown. Anyway, yeah, I definitely would have tried to buy you a drink, is all I'm saying, you know, just from the tattoos,
Yeah.
And the red hair. Anyway, tell me and my wife met, actually. Oh, God.
Me and my husband met. I get
it. Yeah, the same type of thing. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I'll never forget. I think it was on our second date. My wife was like, "Oh, you finally stopped sucking your cheeks in all the time." You know, and I knew she was the one because she hung out when I stopped doing that.
I love it.
Trying to be that goth guy. Anyway, so you're working these cool jobs and they just keep coming. Now you're also doing, you know, hosting panels and whatnot at these Comic Cons. You were down at San Diego Comic Con, and you're in the Fort Collins Comic. Is that Dragon Con, or is Dragon Con a separate one?
Dragon Con is separate. Yeah, this
is that the one in Atlanta?
Yeah, the party con.
Yeah, the party con. My wife and her sister have a small cosplay business where they make props and stuff, and they really got into that. And yeah, that was one of the ones they go, and then when they come home, they're always like, "Don't talk to me for a day. I'm so hungover."
Yeah. Because what's different about Dragon Con is that all these other conventions, pretty much every convention otherwise, is typically in a convention center or a hotel that has other people staying there. And so there are hours to the convention. Dragon Con is in 5 hotels in downtown Atlanta that are all linked with sky bridges. And the whole damn thing is saved for Comic-Con or for Dragon Con, and it's Labor Day weekend. So it starts on Thursday and it runs through Monday. It's 96 hours, and every little conference room in the hotels is dedicated to like a thing. So you have a Trek track, you have a costuming track, you have an anime track, and that track is programmed for the whole weekend. So if you just want to go to the Trek track room and just listen to Star Trek talks for 96 hours, you can.
It's awesome. It is awesome.
Yeah, it is. And it is the cosplay. It's the only one that I dress up. I bring costumes for Dragon Con because I got time, because it's never stopping. The party never stops.
So you do own a heat gun and lots of Warbler, I would imagine.
Lots of EVA foam.
Yeah, and those foam pads. I was at the secondhand store. This was a couple of years ago, and they had a stack of these, like 75 of those pads. And I'm like, how much for the whole stack? And they're like, I don't know, $10. Like, sold. And I wrapped the whole thing for Christmas morning, put that under the tree. And you would have thought I bought her a Fabergé egg or something. She was so happy. I've only been to one Comic-Con, and I lived for 10 years in San Diego, and they give you passes and stuff like that. So I went down, and the only reason, I have nothing against Comic-Cons, but what happened is everybody kept coming up to me and asking, they're like, "So who are you? What character are you cosplaying?" And I'm like, I'm me. I'm not a character. What are you talking? I didn't even know what cosplay was, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. It's a different beast.
Yeah, it kind of turned me off a little bit on it personally. But I got to tell you, my wife and her little gang of girls that she hangs out with, I'll be sitting in the workshop here, and through that door over there is the main house. And they'll all be, walking around in tights and getting ready and dressing up like superheroes or video game people. And my inner 12-year-old nerd is like, you hit the jackpot, because I'm an old man. When I was actually 12 years old, there weren't that many girls that were hanging out, talking Dungeons and Dragons at the comic book store. It just wasn't happening. If they were, we would have worshipped them like a queen. But
it's fun. That's what I love about the conventions, though, is I feel like everyone, because not a lot of people, it might not be because they're not in a relationship where they can do that, or they're not in a work environment where they can express themselves, or they feel that they do have to kind of hide that part of them, and then they go to a convention and they're just comfortable. Like what I love the most is going to a Star Trek convention and seeing people that have to hide that part of their life and that personality, and all they want to do is just put on a Starfleet uniform and
Right.
and not be laughed at, and be able to walk
Absolutely.
around and just order a drink at the bar and just get to wear a Starfleet uniform and just see how happy and comfortable they are. And I'm so touched by it. It is my favorite thing.
I'm telling you, my wife, one of her favorite things is pre-con, where she'll be making these outfits and these crazy things and giant animes, whatever, swords or whatever. I'm like, that guy wouldn't be able to lift that. There's physics involved. And just shut up, Jamie. But anyway, we'll go to one of the big box stores, Home Depot, Lowe's, something like that. And she'll be looking for some little fitting. And of course, one of the workers will come up, some guy, invariably a guy, and he'll start, oh, well, what are you doing? Are you trying to fix your plumbing, the S-trap under your sink, and start mansplaining? She's like, well, no, actually, I'm building a medieval / space sword that blah, 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 and she loses them, it's like me talking art history to most people, they just like, the blank look comes in their face. And it's hilarious. It's hilarious. And she just loves, and when she comes, every con she goes to, if it's local here in like Miami or something, when she comes home, I know we get to go to Wendy's because she doesn't want to take the outfit off and she wants to freak out some of the squares. So we have to go through the drive-through,
I love it.
while she's looking like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool because I get Wendy's,
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take the big Frosty, not the little one. I'm half teasing and kidding on that, folks, but there's an element of truth that's very true in that. So that's cool. Now tell me about Space Cadet over on Amazon Prime. I have yet to watch this. I didn't realize this was even out. I will be watching it tonight.
It's very fun. It is the way I describe. It's a film. The way I describe it is that it is basically Legally Blonde goes to NASA. It's like Florida girl does good and gets into astronaut training program. It's fun, and for me, it's a great example of like why, because I meet a lot of scientists who want to do what I do, which is fair. I get it. But not realizing that, because this happens a lot, and I actually found a lot of difficulty when I was trying to get into science advising in Hollywood. I would find that a lot of writers were very hesitant to take it on because they would reach out, they're working on a sci-fi script and their roommate's cousin works at JPL and they're like, hey, can you look at this script for me? And they tear it apart. They're like, this is dumb. That's stupid. That would never happen. And really with that attitude. And you cannot do that. Like you come in with a yes and like, let's do it. Let's make weird shit happen. And like, you have to have fun.
And there's going to be an element in any of that. Star Trek's a good example of that. Yeah, we haven't discovered dilithium crystals, but you got to, You know how boring Star Trek would be if everybody was going 120,000 miles an hour? You know, I mean,
Exactly. And
okay,
I
we're
think
leaving.
what's so important is it's like, as this, yes, you are stretching a lot of science, but what you're doing is you are creating what feels like a scientific foundation. Like you are creating rules, you are creating technologies that have limitations. And that's when it starts to feel real. But like with Space Cadet, right? That's a modern film and it's a comedy. And I know they had tried to find some science advisors for it and really struggled because people were like, this is dumb, this would never happen, this would never happen. And you have to come in and being like, no, it's happening, that's the story, like that's the
Right.
story. And my job is just, one, make sure we don't say anything wrong and make the smart people in the story sound smart. And it's like, and that
Absolutely.
is my assignment for this film. And it was fun. I'm super proud to be associated with it. It's just a fun movie. And you got to go in with a right attitude. It's not The Martian. It's not Interstellar. It is a comedy, and it's
Well,
really fun.
exactly. I liked both of those. Interstellar, The Martian is, you know, growing up, there were certain movies that me and my friends would have guilty pleasures of, like Roadhouse or something, just because we liked seeing people get beat up and that redneck, that big polar bear falling on 'em. Hilarious, you know. The Martian's one of those for me. I can watch that all the time. Interstellar, I dug the fact, and maybe I'm just a nerd, that the black hole was a sphere and not
Yeah,
just a flat hole
that
like the
was a
drain in your bathtub.
that was
Um,
a fun story too, because they did get a science advisor for Interstellar named Kip Thorne, who looks like a wizard. I call him the Wizard of Gravity. Um, but like he was so excited because they wanted to make the black hole in Interstellar as scientifically accurate as it could be. And you're asking a guy who has written the textbooks on general relativity, the shape of space-time, the shape of black holes, and being like, here's a Hollywood Christopher Nolan graphics budget, because there's no scientific value to write a grant to just make a black hole look right,
right,
right? Make it as pretty as
exactly.
possible. So they gave him that assignment, and man, he ran with it, and it is the scientifically accurate representation. And when we saw the picture of the black hole that they actually imaged, where we got to see the event horizon and everything, is bang on, right? It looks
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, and that's what they always get right. And again, like I'm some sort of expert. It just we've all seen, we've all watched a YouTube video. You know, you have Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye or somebody rolling a marble on a piece of stretched fabric and with a grid painted on it. Yeah, we get it. What they seem to always leave out is the shape of the marble,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just the warping of the grid. But
You'll appreciate that people who've seen me talk for many years at conventions now have a drinking game that every time I say the bowling ball and the trampoline, they have to take a drink.
fantastic. I love it. I love it. Well, you know, it's you were super nice, and you know, you probably wake up knowing this because it's so true. You know, you're cool turned up to 10, and I'm so glad as a fan of science fiction that you're on the job, man. You're making it cool.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And people like you and everybody that's working real hard to entertain us out here, you know, and that's, and whilst entertaining us, maybe teaching us a little something as well. And I think that's pretty cool, you know, pretty cool. I see that my little my little thing here is blinking. I know that when they, and for those at home may not know this, when they have guests that are with, I think they call it stacked in the business, where you're doing a bunch of press interviews all day long, answering the same questions and whatnot. Thank you for subjecting yourself to that. But I always like to give them a little bit of time in between them, you know, to get a cup of coffee, smoke a smoke, whatever. I don't judge. Anyway,
I appreciate it.
thank you so much. And Erin Macdonald, everybody. Erin Macdonald, she is so cool. Now, real quick before I let you go, can we follow you? Are you out on social media, or don't have time for that?
I don't have a ton of time for it, but I am on Instagram at Dr. Erin Mac, DRERINMAC, and the same handle on Blue Sky. I have left the blue bird, which is apparently been killed anyway. And
Me too.
so
Me too.
It's all good. But Blue Sky is a fun place to be, so you can find me there and watch Star Trek Prodigy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Have a great day, Erin, and thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you. Have
And
a good
3
one.
cheers to Annie, the coolest PR girl in the world, working hard to set all this up. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jamie. Appreciate you.
This has been pop art painter Jamie Roxx's Pop Roxx Radio Talk Show. It has been executive produced by Jamie Roxx, recorded at his studio in Deerfield Beach in South Florida. All rights reserved by Pop Roxx Limited. Hannah Oli, Pop Roxx Radio. Estás escuchando Jamie Roxx de Pop Roxx Radio. Manténganse al tanto.
Hej, det här är Hicks från Sverige och ni lyssnar till Pop Roxx Radio med Jamie Roxx.